Welcome to the Inside Track on Real Estate with the Dekker Team. I'm Yetta Dekker.
And I'm Ken Dekker.
And today we're going to do something we haven't done in a few months, which is called the Market Snapshot. And why would we stop and why would we start again? I bet you're running that thought through your head. Well, it's mostly because there wasn't a lot of shift in the market. There wasn't a lot of new information to add, so we thought that maybe it was getting a little bit dry. And that if you really wanted the information, which many of you did, you called and you asked for it for your neighborhood, which we were thrilled to provide and continue to be thrilled to provide. And there's been a bit of a shift in the market, so we thought that it was timely to bring back a market snapshot.
And do you remember when I started talking about the shift in the market?
You tell us, because you remember these
things. It was like November, December.
Oh, a year ago.
Almost a year ago.
Yeah, almost a year ago.
Yeah, and now these are September stats we're going to talk about.
Yeah, because it's October.
And finally, people are catching up with me and saying that the market is shifting.
You know, he's always been telling me that it's time for me to catch up with him. And so here we are. I'm catching up with him. You're catching up with him. He's right once again. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
It is.
Yeah, so let's talk about condos, first of all. Condos is our smallest market.
Segment of the market, yeah.
In the Ottawa market. And condominiums just means that they have a condominium fee.
Right.
Because they have a common area, probably the landscaping, the roadways, and usually the exterior of the building is covered by the condo fee.
And it could be an apartment condo.
Could be an
so then
apartment
there's
building.
Maybe additional amenities inside. There could be a pool, there could be exercise room, party rooms, game rooms, a suite that gets rented out or given to those that are guests that are visiting, that kind of thing. So there's lots of different things that could be included within the condominium corporation where the owners own those areas in common, really.
Mm-hmm. Now the real story with condominiums is there was a lack of them back in about 2010, and now we've overbuilt. And it took the builders quite a long time because to build a condominium tower takes years of development, rezoning, planning, pre-sales before they start selling the product.
Yeah, it does. It takes a long time.
And so it might be a 5-year process to the time they're built up. So they make a commitment when there's a lack of property and now there's a surplus of property and they're still producing more.
Because they already started the process.
Yeah, and they're millions of dollars in to the process, so they don't want to stop. So it's put a real downward pressure on condominium pricing. Now we've watched for years, and I've been saying for 7 years, inventory was increasing. And last year, October, I think it was October, November, we started to see year-end inventory.
Month-end, don't you mean?
Yeah, sorry, month-end inventory compared to the previous month, the year before, start to decrease.
Let's just get that right. The previous year, the same month.
Yes.
Right? It's confusing, and that's one of the reasons we kind of thought these shows may not be adding as much value because you're hearing us talk about it, and if we're tripping up what we're saying, I suspect you're being tripped up mentally in what we're saying. So what we're almost always talking about is a given month and comparing it to that same month in a previous year.
Yep, unless we're doing a year-to-date figure, which I do have some for this show.
Right.
So interesting enough, inventory in 2015 of condominiums for sale on the MLS, that doesn't include the builders that haven't listed with a real estate agent, or the for sale owners that are not on the MLS.
And there's a lot
of new inventory.
Inventory. So that is a little bit skewed in this.
Yeah, but we can only talk about the data that we have from the real estate industry because that's what we're in. So in 2015, there were 2,181 properties at the end of September for sale.
So basically 2,200.
Yeah. And this year, 1,914. So that's a 12% decrease in the number of properties for sale.
So about 300 difference.
Yeah.
About 2,200, about 1,900. I tend to round the numbers because I have a hope of remembering what they mean then and what they pertain to. So we'll give you the specifics and then I'll do my utmost to give you the round. Because then there's something for everybody. Then everybody walks away with getting the data that they're looking for.
Yeah. So 12% decrease in the amount of inventory. That's significant in 1 year.
It is.
Okay, so we're trending the right way. We still have pretty much double the inventory we had 6 years ago.
Yeah, at the end of September.
And yet the trending is going the right direction, and it has been for the whole year. So that's cool.
Well, it really is cool because for 6 years it was going in the upward direction in terms of more inventory left over at the end of the month and every month.
And fewer sales.
And fewer sales.
So it was a double whammy. And now what's happening is our inventory is coming down and our sales are going up. So that trend, supply and demand, will say that pricing will start to reflect that at some point. It has not yet. So what's causing the increase in sales? It's the decrease in price. That's what's causing more sales.
You said decrease in sales. You mean increase?
We've had an increase in sales,
Okay.
decrease in price.
Okay.
It's the decrease in price that is starting to have people turn back to condominiums saying, oh, there's value there now. Because properties are selling at what they sold at 4, 5, 6 years ago, or even lower than what they sold at 5 years ago.
Yeah, if you were selling on average a condominium apartment in particular, not as much so in the condominium townhome market. There doesn't
It's
seem
held a little more
it's
steady.
held a little steadier, so it is really broken into segments within the segment itself. So a townhome style condominium has fared a little bit better, and part of the reason for that is there is not really a lot of new builds
Of that style.
of that style. Almost all of the new builds, which is putting pressure on the resale, is in the high-rise condominium or the luxury low-rise condominium stacked style housing, and also in the terrace style housing.
Yeah, the four stories still with an elevator. I was showing some just last week. Nice properties, new construction on sale with real estate agents. You're finding more and more of that as well as the builders struggle to sell their inventory by themselves. When they have built inventory, they'll hire real estate agents to market that property because they're struggling to sell it by themselves.
Right, which has really always been the trend. We absolutely always show property that is being sold exclusively by the builder because they cooperate with us as realtors. And so for the last 3 decades, we've certainly shown their property as well when it's new construction. And yet when the market gets a little tougher and a little tighter, then the builders generally choose to not only have their own sales force, they choose for inventory to also enlist the sales force of the real estate agents in a more proactive way.
Yeah.
Because we always cooperated, and so did they.
Yeah. So sales in 2016 for September were 269. I know you'll want to round that to 270.
270, yep.
Right. And the previous year it was 223.
Which I want to round to 220.
Okay. Which is not a huge difference, and yet it is.
Yeah.
It's 20% increase in sales year over year for the month of September. So we've had inventory drop 12%, sales increase by 20%, and guess what? Median price. Now I put median price, usually I do average price, and I'm doing both. So median price just says if you knocked off the lowest sales and the highest sales, what's the one in the middle? Okay, and there's a big difference between the median price and the average price. So median price for 2016 was $207,500.
Wow.
Compared to $230 last year.
In the median price.
Yeah, that's a 10% decrease. So that's saying way more of the lower price properties are selling than the high price properties. Because then when we go to average sale price, the average sale price for September was just over $252,000.
Right, so 250.
252,000. 136. Yeah.
So we'll average
just
to
over
250.
250, which was a 2% decrease.
Okay.
Okay, so median price, that's very interesting because median price dropped 10%, average sale price only dropped 2%. So a lot more of the lower price properties are selling.
Okay.
Right? And then months of inventory is another factor which shows how the market's doing. And last year we had 10 months of inventory in September. And this month we have 8.5 months of inventory. So in September. So we're trending the right direction. Now again, a balanced market is around 4 to 6 months of inventory. So we're still in a buyer's market. And it's trending towards a balanced market. It's moving in that direction. So if these factors continue, within about a year or so, we'll be in a totally balanced market again.
Right, because a buyer's market is 6 to 9 months worth of inventory. And so last year at 10 months, we were actually moving toward what you would call a depressed market, which is 10 plus months of
Within
inventory.
the condo.
Within the condominium resale market. And so it's really nice for the first time in quite a few years to be able to say it's getting better.
Yep. We're trending the right direction because I've been saying for 5 years we're trending the wrong direction. And now for almost a full year, we're trending the right direction.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And part of that, as Ken said earlier, is the pricing. So if you're selling a home that you purchased 3, 4, 5, even 6 years ago, and it was in the condominium market, it is probable, especially in the high-rise condominium market, that it will be selling for less than you purchased it for.
Right. Now, the good news, because people think they're losing money, right? The good news is with the interest rates having been so low, like below 3% during pretty much that whole 5-year period.
Well, not quite.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think so. Certainly the past year.
Okay, we'll have to call our favorite mortgage person and ask. But they're certainly low.
Yes.
And at those rates, a little bit more than 50% of your mortgage payment is a mortgage pay down.
Right.
So although you've been making payments and you go, well, the price of my unit went down. Yes, it did. But also your mortgage went down half of your payment every month. So most people are not upside down. They still have more equity in the property than when they bought it because of the low interest rates.
Right, which is a really important factor to consider, because when it sounds like we're giving you gloom and doom, it's kind of nice to know that it really isn't all doom and gloom, because realistically it's not. Like in actual fact, it's actually reasonably good news, because when the interest rates were even at 10%, even at 15%, which they certainly were in my time, and 22% as I was just a new homeowner, right? That's sort of where they started. The amount of pay down that you're doing on your equity was $50 a month, $100 a month.
The first year.
Yeah.
It was really bad.
Right?
The interest was way more than the principal you paid down. And at these rates, where actually our principal paid down is more than the interest right on the first month that you start paying, which is really cool.
Right. So what that means is, because we want a roof over our head anyway, we want to live somewhere, we're either going to pay somebody else's mortgage off and pay rent, or we're going to pay ourselves and pay rent to us, really. And the great news is we're paying down approximately half or greater than half in the actual principal.
Right.
Which is exciting.
Woohoo!
Well, it is, because it creates not being upside down.
Absolutely.
Because it sounds like terrible news when I'm looking straight at you and saying, if you bought a home in the last 6 years, chances are if you're going to go sell it and you're in a high-rise condominium, you're going to sell for less. It sounds terrible, and I almost wanted to choke as I was saying it.
Yes.
And then to know that the flip side of that conversation is it's being created by the low interest rates and by really the properties going up a little quicker than they ought to have in the Ottawa market for the previous years.
And if you're buying another condominium in the same market, then you're saving on that end. So it's okay. If you're moving to the freehold, then maybe you're paying a little more than it would have been 5 years ago. But not a ton, because they haven't been increasing at a high rate. So let's look at year to date for the condominiums. So average inventory for 2015 was 2,135 for 2016, 2,027. So about a 5% decrease overall for the year to date for the 9 months.
Each month?
On average.
On average.
On average.
Okay.
Yeah, I added them all up and divided by 9.
Okay.
Mathematician.
So he is a mathematician. So that's helpful to see that even from when we go a whole year, so he's correct in that it in fact has continually started to just gently go down.
Yeah, September was a huge drop, but 12% over the previous year. But the first 9 months, we've dropped on average 5%.
So that's wonderful.
Yeah, so that's great in inventory. Now, average sale price, $226 in 2015 compared to $222 in 2016 year to date. That's a 2% decrease. Not huge.
Not huge. So reasonably stable. It still stings, and yet it's a minor sting, especially when you take into consideration that your equity position has improved.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
So if you've just joined us now, we've been doing a market snapshot, and we've been talking about the condominium market as a whole in the city of Ottawa, whatever falls inside the Ottawa Real Estate Board jurisdiction. Most of those are more in town. There are certainly some in suburbia. There's not too much of the condominium market in the rural areas.
Right. All right, so let's move on to freehold.
Yeah.
Freehold's a different story. It's a tale of two cities, really. September 2016, our inventory was 9,669.
Yep.
It's 9,700.
Yeah.
And September 2015, we had 11,700. So that's a decrease of 17% in inventory, September to September.
And I think it was 11,703. So here, I'll be specific, since Ken chose not to be.
Yeah. So that's fantastic as far as inventory going down. Now let's look at the sales. 1,100 sales in September compared to 1,000 September last year. So that's an increase of 10%. So inventory went down 17%, sales went up 10%. So you might think, well, we're in a moving towards a seller's market. Yes and no, because we still have about 8 months of inventory.
Right.
For if we just compare September. So that means
and 8 months, just so that we make sure we put context to everything we're talking about, would be still a buyer's market. So although buyers they've been in the market looking for a year or 2 years or 3 years, they're going to feel like now there is less availability than there was 2 or 3 years ago.
Slightly less. And the interesting thing is when you're doing months of inventory, when you're comparing just the 1 month, it's kind of skewed. It's like a part of the data. So, but what's interesting is it was 11, almost 12 months of inventory last September, and now it's just about 8. So that's a big change month to month with the year between, right?
Right, because last year we were really sitting at what we might call it almost a depressed market. We hated using that language because Ottawa doesn't go depressed. and yet it really was trending toward that. The buyers had an abundance of selection, a lot of control, and it's making negotiating even now a little more arduous and a little more difficult because over the course of these last 3, 4, even 5 years now, the buyers have been able to demand more, and it's actually been a more challenging journey for the sellers because there's been more pressure on them because if they don't want to cooperate with potentially the lower price or the repair after the inspection or the renovation or the thing that needs to be handled, and because of the competition and because you're in a beauty contest, then in fact what happens is your home just doesn't sell.
Yes. And it's interesting because we've always said we have a stable market. And we're relatively stable, even though some of the numbers are down slightly, like average price, it's still relatively stable. We're not seeing 10, 20% drops. We're seeing like a couple percent.
Right.
And then when you compare to Toronto, Vancouver that are on fire, it's a little challenging. You know, when people go, well, how come the houses in Toronto are selling in a heartbeat and they're not here? Well, some of them are. And we're going to talk about that shortly. So Median sale price, 303 this year, 303,000 compared to 300 last year. So median sale price up 1%.
So essentially the same.
Yeah. Average sale price, 383,793, which you're going to round to
384.
384. That's a 0.1% decrease, September over September.
So essentially flat.
Yeah, because if you sold one smaller house and didn't sell one bigger house, suddenly there's your 0.1. So really, they're positive numbers. Overall, it's very, very positive. Now, there is something that's a little bit scary, and we don't know the answer to this yet, how it's going to affect our market. Because the government wanted to slow down some of the tougher markets, like the ones that are booming, like Vancouver and Toronto, they put in some lending policies which are affecting us now as of October 17th.
So 4 days ago.
Yeah. And what it does, and it's designed to protect Canadians, really, is what it's done. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It will affect our real estate market somewhat, and I'm not sure how much yet, because we have to wait and see.
4 days in, it's a little tricky to tell you.
So what the policy is basically you used to qualify at the 5-year discounted rate for the amount of money you could borrow. Mm-hmm. And now the government said, no, you have to qualify at the posted rate. They call it a stress test.
The Bank of Canada rate.
Yeah. And when you qualify at that rate, you'll still get the discounted rate, so you get a lower payment, but you have to qualify at the higher payment, which for the government says, well, if interest rates go up, then our Canadians are not going to be losing their houses because they can already afford it at the higher rate. So it's a protection mechanism. And it will slow down the real estate market, because what's going to happen is someone that qualified for $400,000, if you qualified for $400,000 mortgage, under the new process, you might only qualify for $325,000.
Yeah, between $300,000 and
to $325,000. And we don't know how that's going to affect. Now, that is for people with high ratio mortgages, which means you have 5%, 10%, 15% down.
Or any insured mortgage.
Any insured mortgage, yes. Most people who have 20% down, if they go to the bank, and we don't know how the bank's going to change their lending policy, but right now, most of the banks don't insure mortgages that are 80% mortgages, 20% down or greater. Yeah. So the new lending rules do not affect you right now if you're got 20% down and you're dealing with a regular bank. The monoline, no, that's hard to say. The monoline lenders, and what a monoline lenders is, to simplify it, is they only do one product, and that is mortgages. They don't do checking accounts, they don't do bank accounts, they don't do line of credits, they don't do any other lending. They only do a mortgage. They have historically insured all their mortgages. So they take their bulk mortgages that are 20% down or greater, and they insure them. Now they've got to look at that, because the the insurance people, which is government backed, has said, nope, you can't insure it unless it passes the stress test. So that may affect them, but we're not sure how they're going to handle that yet.
It's all being worked out
all new
as we're chatting with you.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
So if you have questions around that, because it is confusing, we've attempted to simplify it and give you just a quick overview snapshot. So really, it's just to recognize that very potentially, if you have a pre-qualification that was done before October 17th of 2016, that you may want to go back to your financial institution, whether you're a mortgage specialist or whether a bank, and have them pre-qualify you, because with the new stress test, it may impact you. And you may not know for sure, so just a great idea no matter what's going on. If you haven't purchased a home by October 17th, 2016, then 4 days ago, then you want to get pre-approved.
Yeah, pre-approved. Because there's nothing worse than shopping for a home, finally finding one you love, putting an offer in on it, going through the negotiations, and getting a property, and then finding that you can't afford it because the lending policies changed.
Yeah. And I know it's something the selling agents are now going to be asking as well when people are coming with pre-approvals. It's when was that pre-approval done. So you actually strengthen your negotiating position if you have pre-approved. We have a couple of great, actually 3 amazing properties to chat about.
Awesome.
And the really cool thing with all of them,
that's why we picked them.
I know. We do select based on different criteria every time. You never know quite what we're going to pull. And this time we chose to pull properties that have exterior, oversized garages. They're all insulated.
Detached.
Not necessarily, but they're all large spaces, and they all allow for you to run home-based businesses if you want. They're all on either side of an acre of land, so they're all well positioned in terms of space, inside and outside, and they're all in the south area, really, from Manotick Station to just the other side of Greeley. So they're really, well, still Greeley, actually. So they're all in that same corridor just off Mitch Owens Road, and they range in price from $400 to $660. So why, if they all sound the same? Because they're not really the same. We shared with you.
The houses aren't the same.
The houses aren't the same. The commonality is the workshop, the land, similar location, and your utility for home-based businesses.
Yeah. So let me talk about one of them, Goth Road. $400,000.
Yeah.
Beautifully renovated older home, split level. Mm-hmm. Very, very nice. The basement is a half basement. So one side is more crawl space and the other side is livable, and laundry room and a bedroom and our office and a family room down there. And then beautifully updated kitchen, fantastic ceramic floors, newer carpet. It's 1.5 bathrooms. There is room in the master bedroom. There's an extra room. If you wanted to add another bathroom, there is room to do that. Yeah. And then it has this lovely large garage, which has a large door that you could fit like a truck into, transport truck, and then a smaller door. And it has solar panels on the roof, which they are bonusing. They're going to give the solar panels for free. They just bought them about 6 months ago for about $38,000. They have an income of about $300 a month. Yep. And all of that for $400,000.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
And then the one on Mitch Owens is actually $625. Incredible pool. So it's home, play, and business all wrapped into one. Amazing fireplace, stone wall in the living room space. Just a really...
Hardwood floors.
Hardwood floors.
It's not
gorgeous.
an old house.
No, it's very recent.
Yeah.
It's recently... everything. It's gorgeous with lots of shop space and lots of parking space, an abundance of parking space on that one. And then another amazing property on Marcella, huge space inside and outside, and it has brand new shingles. So you don't have to think about that forever.
Most of them do.
Well, yeah, I guess they all do. Fabulous. Yeah. So if you're interested in those, you know what to do. Give us a call and just call us for anything you have a question about.
So call us at 613-860-4663. And thanks for joining us on the Inside Track on Real Estate with the Dekker Team.